It is a horrific scene to watch. A cashier using a metal rod to brutally beat two female customers who provoked and then charged over the counter at him inside this Greenwich Village McDonald's on West 4th Street.
That was at about 8 o'clock. There was a male here with a younger female, 13 to 16-year-old female Hispanic, and they had some kind of dispute, some kind of an argument. He ended up grabbing her by the hair, striking her at least once, and dragging her up the hillside behind us. Apparently he was tearing off her clothes because we found some articles of clothing on that hill that matched what the victim was wearing.
A 7-year-old left alone for just a moment. Her mother was just a couple of aisles over in Walmart, and she was almost abducted. ABC's Youngie Denise joins us live from...
Call the police.
The attacker is Sam Suleiman, the key subject of a series of reports by Fox 6 investigative journalist John Mattis. Now finds himself in a fight for his life.
Warning strap hangers after a string of armed robberies on subway trains. At least 10 people have been robbed in armed attacks at one Soho station. CBS News' Dave Carlin shows us the suspects and what they're after.
As we've seen, the police scanner is used as an important source for local news. But how much of the newscast should be devoted to crime? Joining me here on the set is Chuck Ballinger, who is here to discuss this.
Hello,
Chuck,
Pam.
thank you for joining us. Tell me what inspired you to write the editorial that you mentioned, the fact that the news does use these police scanners for the most part in their newscast.
Well, about a month ago, I was watching the news at noon, and I happened to notice that the first 19 minutes of the news was devoted to fires and murders all across the country. I think there was a fire in Ohio, and there was a murder in New York and Miami. And it struck me as a bit odd, with all the things going on in the Bay Area, that 19 minutes out of 30 was devoted to the top 10 crimes in the country.
Because if we have a half-an-hour newscast and we spend 10 minutes of the first part of the newscast killing people, which is what we do, we count the number of bodies in our newscast. And hey, in the A block, in the first 10 minutes, we killed 19 people. That's a new record. That's great. You know, then what else are we talking about? And the reasons we do it are, it's easy. There's a scanner that goes off in the newsroom and tells us where the crime is. And what do people want to see? They want to see that stuff. You know, that's what sells.
Do you watch local news?
Not very much anymore. I used to, but it's just kind of all about death and awful, nasty stuff. It's not very interesting.
I gotta say, I don't like watching the media, especially local and national news, because of all the horrible things they have to say about all the horrible things that go on. And then you see a horrible thing on one source, and then pretty soon it's on every other channel, and it's the same story, and we're focusing too much on those horrible things that are out of our control. I mean, there's a lot going on around here that you actually can, you know, change if you really want to.
In the beginning, we were lapdogs. We, you know, people who were around for Franklin Roosevelt's presidency didn't know he was in a wheelchair. Because the White House didn't want the press to know that. I mean, didn't want the people to know. So we, as the press, gave into that and did what the White House told us. Well, then Watergate came, and it was really the Rodney King riot, not the Rodney, Watts riots in '67, and then Watergate, which is all about the same period, when we became the watchdog. We actually became legitimate profession in an important part, fourth estate, an important part of society. And then we became the junkyard dog. And this, I think, goes back to O.J. Simpson. And it started at O.J. Simpson.
With all the stuff with O.J. going on now, the question does come up, what amount of the news should be actually reported right away, and what portion should be maybe placed on a current affair or hard copy or show like that.
Now, speaking of some of those shows, there are a lot of these sensational half-hour, I don't want to call them news shows, that seem to be pretty popular. So do you, I mean, it kind of leads me to believe that people want this kind of
Yeah,
news.
they're definitely popular, and they definitely help ratings. And the big question seems to be just how much of it is actually news and how far you can take it into the news broadcast, with the problem being that other news in the community is just not reported. There's all sorts of seminars and fundraisers and groups needing volunteer work.
For some people, they tell me, you know, I can't even watch the news anymore because there's, you know, violence and people dying, and it just reminds them about their own vulnerability. And it really is not helpful for them. And so for a lot of my patients, based on their own intuition, they've chosen to, you know, selectively turn off the TV or to get their news from their computer, where they can select, you know, the stories that are interesting to them.
It's no secret that crime stories attract viewers, listeners, and readers. It means victims of crime are often thrust into the limelight, whether they're willing or not. Large-scale tragedies like the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing and the 1999 Columbine High School massacre in Littleton, Colorado, draw thousands of journalists and force hundreds of victims into the public eye. While tragedies with fewer victims but sensational circumstances can also inspire a media frenzy. A frenzy capable of magnifying a victim's pain and suffering. Part of the problem, no doubt, exists because the media justify their actions as serving the public's right to know. And in doing so, some journalists go to extremes.
Reporters can be very pushy, very arrogant in their approach to the people they interview at times.
Colorado State University journalism professor Greg Luft says competitive instincts and professional pressures often push journalists into undesirable behavior. Organizations compete for ratings or circulation, and reporters are pressured to be first and most complete. Individual competition also comes into play, with journalists taking pride in being first, enjoying the attention that brings, and knowing that aggressive reporting can lead to better jobs. Luft believes that journalists are more likely to force the issue when stories take on sensational overtones. Getting caught up in the circus-like atmosphere and feeling less responsible to conventional ethical practices. Also, even if a reporter does an admirable job gathering information, editors and headline writers who don't have a feel for the situation may sensationalize material for hype value before it's broadcast or printed. Next, by training, journalists are visually oriented, so there's almost always pressure to get pictures of the crime scene or victims. Reporters also strive to interview victims of crime because of the belief that real-life reactions give their stories more personality, character, and impact. Many journalists also believe that giving victims the opportunity to talk is beneficial. But Luft believes that deadline pressures often have the most impact on how journalists approach a story, with broadcast reporters usually the most aggressive because of multiple, non-negotiable deadlines each day.
Turning to news making headlines around America this morning, in Michigan, police have arrested a man who's suspected of chopping up his wife. Michigan police say suspect Stephen Grant was captured in Michigan's Wilderness State Park and airlifted to a hospital. The area is more than 400 miles from Grant's suburban Detroit home. The 37-year-old man is accused in the death of his wife, Tara Lynn Grant. A torso and body parts of who is believed to be the mother of two were found this weekend in and near the Grant home.
Just when you think you've heard everything, here comes a story that takes things to a new level of outrageousness.
Yes, we're sure you heard of Girls Gone Wild. Well, now we have Criminals Gone Wild, which has reportedly turned into a bona fide hit DVD. Chris Glorioso is live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn tonight with more on the self-taught filmmaker who makes no apologies for filming what he says are crimes in progress. Chris?
Oh, Jim, listen to this. This is the DVD, and on the artwork on the cover, it says, "Watch as unsuspecting victims get beat, robbed, jacked, and shot." That's what it says on the cover, and wait till you see the video itself. The producer says many of the criminals caught on tape live right here in this Crown Heights neighborhood. And well, now some people are wondering, should that producer himself be charged?
I don't know if anybody died because I didn't stick around to see. But it's some real shocking stuff. I mean, we even had a rape scene, but we took that out the DVD because it was just way too much.
Kusala Alim insists he did not encourage the thugs on his DVD. He says they committed the crimes to show how cold-blooded they really are.
The news covers murders, robberies, rapes. So basically the news is capitalizing off of it too. So what makes me any different from them?
What I would like to see, especially for local upcoming events, is, again, a news that you can use, something that shows us what's happening within the next week, what's happening tonight. So, for example, we see flyers all over town, but I don't have anywhere to actually watch what's going on.
I personally think it should be less accidents, more positive things. I think it's really important to project to the consumer, to the reader, that all the positive things that are happening in our community through television, through different medias.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe less focus on the sensational car crashes and fires.
Exactly, yeah.
I'd like to see a little bit more investigative reporting. I don't think I see enough of that. I think some of the stories that lie within the city, I mean, they hit the major ones, somebody got hit by a bus or something, they'll cover that. But you don't see anything as far as the inner politics and what's going on behind the scenes, behind anything that's going on in the government. So they should tell you what's coming up this weekend. I hardly ever see anything about what's coming up, but more about, oh, this is what happened today.
And as far as I'm concerned, if an alcoholic in East San Jose beats up his girlfriend, that's not particularly relevant to my life. Whereas if a group like Angel Island needs volunteers, I think I'd rather hear about something like that. I could apply myself to that need. So I think there's a lot of justification saying that these other good news stories aren't Pollyanna and they're actually hard news. Frankly, I think it's in the best interests of news programs to take the initiative on this and to change their format. There have been a number of polls that have shown that people are getting fed up with this kind of negative tabloid journalism. And I think if a producer took it on himself to, or herself to change the format and provide more information, useful information, then I think they'd get some really good ratings out of it. And I think that it could work for everybody all the way down the line.
Sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms.
What do people want to see? They want to see that stuff. You know, that's what sells.
The news covers murders, robberies, rapes. So basically the news is capitalizing off of it too. So what makes me any different from them?